we are, day three on the excursion of watching and reviewing every episode of Echo. That's right, all five episodes. And as I just stated, this is day number three, so episode number three. Looking forward to getting into this and discussing all the nitty gritty details of this TV show. But before we get too far into things here, I did want to bring to light something that I've mentioned before in so many different ways, but there's actually a reasoning for me mentioning this topic yet again, and that is we all appreciate these superhero movies. I mean, or the TV shows even, but even the ones that aren't so good, there's still something there to be valued and appreciated, right? Because we see what it could have been. And there's reasons why some of these not so great superhero TV shows or movies, why we're left wanting. Obviously the worst thing that there could be is apathy. And I've said before that for me at times, apathy feels like it's setting in. And that's like the worst case scenario. Worse than being angry about something being bad, it's just not caring that something is bad. But the only reason I bring all this up and what I'm trying to get to here is that none of these amazing stories or characters would exist if there were not a source material to draw upon. And that's where these comic book creators come in. These comic book creators have curated for me some of the greatest stories that I've ever had the pleasure to experience. And it's good for me, obviously, too. I never really have to remind myself of that simply because the room in which I record these podcasts are surrounded by some of my favorite comic books. And it's one of my favorite places to think. It's one of my favorite places to read. And it's one of my favorite places to reflect upon the reasons why I love comic books so goddamn much. So I bring all this up to mention because over the past few years, we've lost, unfortunately, quite a few really legendary and iconic comic book creators. And it's unfortunate to say, but there's too many to name. And if I start naming them now, I'm going to forget someone who I know I love and appreciate. But it's good to give flowers while these creators are still here. And it's good to, even if there's storylines of theirs that you didn't appreciate, it's good to look back at the ones that you did and just to give thanks for. So Peter David, who we've mentioned before on the podcast, and as a matter of fact, myself and several other homies who have been on this podcast several times, we've had the pleasure to meet Peter David and to see him at one of our somewhat local conventions in Atlanta called Dragon Con. I got to attend two panels with Peter David, and let me tell you, the guy is a fantastic storyteller, not just on the written pages, but also in person telling stories. He's so lively and so incredibly fun and funny to be around. And his stories are pretty freaking iconic, man. There's a reason why he's so highly regarded. Over the past few years, his health hasn't been up to par. He's been battling some pretty serious health issues. And admittedly, I'm not really sure as to the details, but I know that it does include dialysis. So based off my limited understanding of dialysis, I'm pretty sure that involves some sort of organ failure to a degree. The good news is, from what I understand, his health is making improvements. That part is phenomenal. What is not phenomenal, however, is the amazing healthcare system here in America. And Peter David has actually, I believe he started this almost a year ago now, his GoFundMe page. And I believe on the podcast, we mentioned it some time ago when it was first introduced. But just in light of, more recent events, and just because these creators Unfortunately, man, it seems like we're losing them more and more as the years go on. I thought it was important to bring it up here again. I think that they are close to hitting their goal, and I think that they've actually done a pretty good job with it so far. I believe the goal was $300,000, and I believe they've raised about 245,000 of it so far. So if you guys have any spare change, please be sure to go to Peter David's GoFundMe page and just give that a look through. If you guys are in the giving spirit, that is. I know money's tight. Trust me, no one knows that more than me and Peter Parker. Money is tight. But if you guys were curious as to some of the comics that he has written, some of my personal favorites that I actually own here, Spider-Man 2099. Boy, that is an expensive ass omnibus, but thankfully I was able to snag it on sale. Phenomenal read. So if you guys like Miguel O'Hara, or if you've seen the latest Spider-Verse movie and want to know more about the character, that is definitely the starting place for Miguel. He's done X-Force. That's another one of another actually couple of his omnis that I own. His X Factor omnis. Yeah, he actually, I believe his incarnation of X Factor uh, is, yeah, I was thinking about like all the different iterations of it. Um, I think his probably is my favorite, but that may also just be because that was the first X Force run that I ever read. He has Captain Marvel. Don't worry, it's not that one. His Captain Marvel run was on Gina's Veil. That's the son of Marvel. And I actually haven't read any of that, but I have read several comics in the past that feature Gina's Veil as Captain Marvel. So I imagine that those were probably written by Peter David, but I'm not sure. Young Justice. That was my first encounter with Young Justice. Actually, was Peter David's run. And as a matter of fact, it recently got the omnibus treatment as well. I have not picked that up as of yet because, hot damn, these books are getting expensive. But my goodness, it is also a incredible read from what I remember from way back when I was just young Q. It really goes hand in hand with like Grant Morrison's Justice League run back in the day. Really good stuff. But obviously, and most notably, would be like his, what was it, 10 or 12-year run on the Incredible Hulk. So on this podcast, I've mentioned before how like Greg Pak's Incredible Hulk run when he did Planet Hulk and World War Hulk. I think that's some of like the best Hulk stuff I've ever read. And I've mentioned Al Ewing's Immortal Hulk run, how that may be my favorite Hulk run of all time, maybe even better than Planet Hulk. It's close. It's a close one. It's hard to say, but more than anything, I think maybe what is considered not just the lengthiest Hulk run, but possibly the most character defining Hulk run is Peter David's Hulk. Uh, it spans 5 omnis in and of itself. And I don't know if there's actually a volume 6 that follows that as well. I just know that there's currently 5 omnis released containing Peter David's Incredible Hulk run. And that does not include his She-Hulk run or his Maestro run. So, I mean, he has just done so much work for the Hulk and on the Hulk. So this guy, I mean, he's legendary. Like, he's done so much work across Marvel and DC. So I know I've rambled on and on here, and I'm going to get to the main event here very, very soon, I promise. But again, just wanted to highlight somebody who has played such a huge role in the comic book industry and one of the greats. And we live in a day and age, unfortunately, where we are losing these greats at a very frequent pace. So here's to Peter David's health improving, and here's to us continuing to enjoy more and more amazing comic books in the future. So with that being said, homies one and all, welcome back to another very special episode of the Superhero Homies podcast. My name is Quentin, once again flying solo dolo to review Echo Episode 3, titled Tuklo. Had to take a double glance at that. this episode required a few things from me. It required me to take frequent pause breaks, and it also required uh, some liquid courage, some alcohol to sip upon because yeah, yeah, my goodness. So obviously, full spoilers ahead. So if you haven't seen Echo episode 3, then I highly advise you hit that pause button, go watch the episode, and then come back and resume. Slight discourse first. Episode 1 of Echo, I went in obviously blind, and I was a little apprehensive. These Marvel Disney Plus TV shows haven't exactly been the best to me, and I was very concerned about this show. I was concerned about the relevancy of this show, or the need for an Echo TV show. I didn't quite understand why, out of all the characters, why so many of these TV shows got greenlit when they're kind of B tier characters at best, at very best. And that's me being gracious. And Echo was one of them that I was very concerned about because I didn't understand the need for an Echo TV show, especially one that strays so far away from the source material. Because, as I've stated before, the further that Marvel Disney strays from the source material, unless your name is James Gunn, the worse the product is. And I stand by that completely. Uh, so I went into the Echo TV show very, very cautious. And as I've said time and time again at this point, I actually really enjoyed episode 1. I thought that it was a great recap on her origin. I thought that it was very, very fast paced. I really enjoyed the action sequence in that episode. I thought that the camera work, along with the stunt work, was very well done. I like what they did with Daredevil's fighting style, combining more of his comic booky aspects along with the grittiness and hard hitting nature of the Netflix series. I enjoyed just seeing Vincent D'Onofrio chew the fat on every scene he's in that episode. And obviously, I mean, I gave it an 8.3 out of 10, so it wasn't perfect. There were some things about it that I didn't like, but for the most part, I thought it was a very strong opening, although it was mostly just a recap and an origin story. We got to episode 2, and I thought the show fell off a goddamn cliff. I didn't know what happened. I didn't know how the show in quality tanked quite that hard. And again, if you guys haven't listened to that episode, then you can go back and check it out to understand all the reasons why that show, or why that episode just didn't do it for me. It was an extremely tough watch, and that kind of dampened my spirits. And so for episode 3, I went in. I'm not gonna say hopeful, but maybe wishful is the word. Like, man, I wish that this episode could be at least almost as good as episode 1. Like, maybe they can pull a course correction and turn this ship around. And I'm not going to mince words here. They didn't. I think that this episode is just as bad, if not worse, than episode 2. I don't know if the people who wrote this show believe in second drafts. I don't know how some of these decisions made it off the cutting room floor. I don't know what happened to the stunt and action choreography. The editing choices were very bizarre, to say the least. The pacing of the show is so fucking erratic that it's hard to put your finger on exactly when certain events are actually taking place. Overall, this episode was it was a jumbled fucking hot mess. How this made it through through any sort of testing eyes first is beyond me. This episode was just messy all the way around. And I mean, yeah, at this point, man, with only 2 episodes left, I can only hope for a merciful ending rather than a good ending. But I mean, stranger things have happened, so we'll see. With that being said, let's go ahead and get into the recap and break some of these scenes down. So it starts off with the vintage Marvel spotlight logo. I'm not even drunk yet, man. I just took a few sips. Good grief! It's been a long day. Yeah, so we get that Marvel Spotlight logo, that old school classic black and white looking vibe. It puts you in the mind of like Werewolf by Night, which I actually quite love, by the way. I thought that Werewolf by Night was pretty darn nifty. So if you guys haven't seen that special, I would say put Echo on pause if you haven't finished it and go watch that. Is really good. Anyway, this cold open takes place in like the form of an old school black and white TV show. And it takes place in the late 1800s, it says. And I have the beginning of a few quotes that they show on screen here. It says, Indian country was infested with dangerous criminals threatening the safety of the native nations. End quote. And then it goes on to talk about how to battle these evil criminals, a group of people band together called the Light Horsemen, and they were basically like the enforcement, the people who kept those criminals at bay. And there is a girl whose name is Tuklo, and she's the daughter of one of these Light Horsemen. And you know, she trains with her dad, and she is really skilled, and she wants to be a Light Horseman, and she says that she's ready to go out and fight, you know, these evildoers with her dad. And her dad informs her and us as the audience that only men can be Light Horsemen and women have another role to play, you know, womanly stuff or whatever. Again, this is nothing new. Yeah, this we got this. Okay, so yeah, this is this is nothing new. But I mean, hell, if you guys haven't seen the episode, you can probably guess what happens. Without looking at my notes, even hand over the notes. Yeah, she is very disgruntled that she does not get to be a Light Horseman, but she's not going to give up. And so her dad and the other Light Horsemen, they were ambushed by a group of these criminals. Tuklo shows up, and she stands right there in the middle of an open goddamn field, puts all the bad guys down, and proves her worthiness, and she's great, incredible, bold, and brave. That was the cold open. All right. And then to get to the actual, do I need to talk about that anymore to you guys? Is there anything more you guys need to hear about the cold open? I got nothing. I have no energy or care for this anymore. Like, if you guys aren't gonna try, then why should I put forth more effort into reviewing the shit that you guys, you know, didn't put the effort into producing the show in the first place? You know, it's frustrating when you see. I mean, we saw this again with She-Hulk, right? And we've seen this actually with several different Marvel products where like they use the intellectual property of a comic book character to just sell us something else completely. I mean, we saw it with Eternals. We've seen it with so many different things now, and it is so frustrating to deal with. I would be so much better off with these movies and TV shows if I've never picked up a comic book in my life. But to see these characters strut around and call themselves the names of these characters, I'm like, this just is not it. And it's not only the fact that this show has no integrity for the source material. You know what? Again, like I said, apathy's kind of set in. So I really, at this point, not only do I not care, but I expect Marvel to do this kind of thing at this point. But even more so, it just kind of has me thinking about what the purpose of them doing that is, right? So if you just so dead set on throwing the comic book out the window and doing your own thing with these characters, and this isn't just Echo that I'm picking on right now. This is pretty much 75% of the shit that came out after Endgame. If you're so dead set and intent on not having any kind of integrity or any kind of care or respect for the source material, then you should at least have the decency, have the creativity to come up with something that is good. I don't know how long exactly this Echo TV show has been in production, but I know that there was a long layoff for a while, and it took at least 2 years for the show to come out. And in that time frame, this is what we get. This is the best you guys could do. So, in other words, when you don't have the source material to rely on, and you have to lean onto your own understanding and your own knowledge of what you want to do with this character, this is the best you can do. If that's the case, then I highly suggest you go and dig through the garbage and look for the comic books you threw away because you desperately need them. You do. These comic book creators are riding circles around these Hollywood guys and girls. It's bad. It's bad out here. Yeah, it just doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me, right? Like if you're gonna try to pull a James Gunn and disregard some of the natures for these characters, then you got to have a James Gunn type of creativity, and you don't. And instead, you just write the most tropey, nonsensical bullshit that I've had the displeasure to watch in a long, long time. But let's get into why that is here. So yeah, that cold open was, uh, I I don't have the words for it, man. I'm over it. Uh, but the episode proper starts off with Chula, who's of course the grandmother of Maya, and she goes into Scully's shop and she talks with him about Maya being back in town. And Scully and Chula, they were married. I believe we saw them in the very first episode. I don't believe we 100% saw them in the very first episode, but somewhere in those 20 years they split, and Scully's still trying to put the moves on Chula, but she's not having it. And I mean, I think Scully can do better. Like Chula, she's so fucking prudish, and just I don't know, man. Like this lady looks like she hasn't fucking smiled in at least 25 years. Um. Next thing that kind of happens here is Maya has a some kind of vision of like Chafa and Lowak and Tuklo, and that vision doesn't do her any fucking good because she immediately gets Bill Cosby'd and kidnapped. And when she comes to, she is tied upside down in the skating rink. Unfortunately, this is where the episode goes off the fucking rails. And yes, this is at the very beginning of the episode. So she awakens tied upside down, and she's in the skating rink, the one that Henry owns, who I believe is her uncle, something of the sort. And she's able to free herself, and she hits the skating rink. Ow, that hurts because skating rinks are fucking hard. And it's at this point where Vicky, Bridget, and Grace, those were the ones that kidnapped her, they take Maya and they shove her into like one of the back closets. By the way, Vicky is the dipshit asshole from episode 1 who was working the register at the skating rink. The guy who he sent the message out, the text message saying that he may have information about Maya's whereabouts if the bounty is still on the table. That guy. I've never seen a guy named Vicky before. Anywho, yeah, Vicky, Grace, and Bridget. Yeah, Grace and Bridget are two new bitches on the scene here, and yeah, the three of them kidnap Maya. Uh, I will give the show some mercy here, okay? Because, and this is probably me actually adding in information to the show that the show didn't bother to do. I will assume that the only way these three bumbling, incompetent morons were able to get the drop on Maya is because she was having a fucking vision dream about her ancestors. Because looking at everything that Maya does here in this, and I mean in this episode and in the previous two episodes, I don't see how they could possibly fucking do it. It doesn't make sense. But if she was distracted by seeing the fucking ghost of her ancestors, that'll do it. That'll distract me enough, you know. Anyway, yeah, they get the drop on Maya and tie her upside down, and then she frees herself, and then they take her and throw her in the broom closet. And the plan here is to keep her there until some unknown benefactor shows up to take Maya into parts unknown. Henry is also in the skating rink. He's tied up. He's not in the broom closet. They just have him kind of tied up in a sitting area out in the lobby of the skating rink. And Bonnie shows up to the skate rink and knocks on the door. The lights are on in the skate rink, but no one's there. Okay, so there's a lot in this episode that doesn't make sense, and this is probably the least of the shit that doesn't make sense in this episode. But this is like a small town in Oklahoma. I mean, it gives off very small town vibes. And in this small town location, there is a skating rink. And I don't know how many other avenues of entertainment there are in this town, but something tells me there's not a whole lot. This may be like one of the top two, maybe top three sources of entertainment for people of all ages in this town. Fun for the whole family. And on some random day of the week, doesn't look like it's that late either. It certainly is not that late. Maya got kidnapped in broad daylight. I don't know how long that Bill Cosby chloroform lasts, but I imagine that she woke up no later than an hour or two later. And when she comes to, like, it's not dark, but it looks like it's dusk when Bonnie shows up. Bonnie, of course, is the cousin sister, maybe lover of Maya. I don't know. And and Bonnie shows up, and there's no one else there. And I guess she's there to speak with Henry about Maya's whereabouts. We never really get to discuss why she's there, but she is there. But what's odd is that no one else is there. What's also odd is why would the kidnappers take Maya to the skate rink, like one of the most popular hopping places in town? Why? You could have taken her anyway. This seems like a small kind of backwoods town. There's plenty of places in the cut you could have taken Maya, but instead you take her to the fucking skate rink, where it seems like so many people love to go to. I I do not comprehend this logic whatsoever. So yeah, Bonnie shows up, and for whatever reason, no one else shows up, but Bonnie does. And she gets let in, and then she's confronted by Henry. Bet I know what you're thinking. Q, Henry was just tied up. Why is he free? Well, you see, Vicky is off to the side where Bonnie cannot see, and Vicky has a gun that he's pointing at good old Henry, and Henry has to play along and tell Bonnie everything's okay, the skate rink's closed, IRS is auditing us, go away, everything's cool. But he's also using sign language at the same time to tell Bonnie that no, shit's not sweet here. Something's like shit is not cool. We need help. Uh, Again, this is me putting information into the show, but I assume that Vicky, Grace, or Bridget, one of the three had to have seen the obvious hand gestures that Henry was using to tell Bonnie, because obvious hand gestures were obvious. Anyway, Bonnie, she plays along with Henry's facade, and she leaves and she goes to grab her radio out of her truck, and then boom, she gets Bill Cosby'd. How much of that shit do they have? Good grief. And when she awakens, she is, well, I don't know exactly, she falls asleep, but they do put like the whole cloth hand over the face, and then they drag her off and throw her in the same broom closet as Maya. Now, I'm not done ripping apart the idiocracy of this episode thus far. We're going to rewind a little bit here. When the Three Stooges first put Maya in that little closet area, they had this debate about who was going to watch her, who was going to guard Maya. And Vicky didn't want to do it because he had the excuse of waiting for the benefactor to show up to collect the bounty on Maya. And I forget who was who between Grace and Bridget. They're not important, but it was either Grace or Bridget. I think it was Grace maybe that says, she kind of alludes that she doesn't want to watch Maya, and then I think it's Bridget, the bigger of the two women, who then says, "Oh, since you guys are so scared, I'll watch her. I'm not afraid of her." And then she proceeds to leave the room with the other two. Like, what? So, this show is making me feel like I'm a dumbass because I could have sworn that she just said she's not afraid of Maya. She will stand in the room and watch her. And then she proceeds to leave immediately, leaving Maya to her own vices. Or devices, I should say. Speaking of devices, that's exactly what she has. Because once they throw Bonnie into the room and then leave again, Maya uses her boot knife to free herself and then frees Bonnie. And then they have, the whole conversation. Oh my gosh, blah blah blah. Where have you been? We have to get out of here. Da da da. You guys all know the song and dance. But yeah, I have here in my notes. The Three Goons suck. What the fuck is this show? And the reason I have that written down here is because after some commotion and whatnot, because for some reason Maya and Vicky just haven't left the room. They're just standing around there talking, trying to figure out their next move. And then the Three Stooges, they barge into the broom closet after hearing some noises. Keep in mind, I know that Maya's a badass. She is definitely the most badass person in this town. Probably since ever. But they have a fucking gun, and there's three of them. Okay. I don't know how much of a fight Bonnie's going to put up. I know that firefighters are tough, but Bonnie does not have that imposing nature that Maya does. Not even close. I definitely think that either Bridget and or Grace could probably take out Bonnie, but but Maya's like fucking Rambo. It's going to take a whole platoon to take her down. But they have a gun, all right, and like point blank range. Now, clearly, they cannot kill Maya because that would destroy the deal that they have. The benefactor wants Maya alive, so they cannot kill her. The show at least has the common decency and courtesy to reiterate that point for anyone who didn't pick up on that already. However, what proceeds to happen is some of the most baffling, nonsensical bullshit I have seen on a television show probably since ever. It's really fucking dumb. It's extremely dumb. So the Three Stooges, who have the gun, are so afraid of Maya that they just leave the fucking room and close the door. They don't threaten her. They don't try to clip her in the arm with a bullet, or the cliche shoulder wound, or another. Hell, you shoot Maya in the other leg and then you take her prosthetic leg. I think you got her at that point. But they don't do that. What do? They don't pistol whip her. They don't attempt to tie her up again, but better this time. No, what they do is they just fucking leave the room, and Maya and Bonnie are still as free as the day they were born. And so the Three Stooges leave the room, and they're just like, I'm sure they'll stay there until the benefactor shows up. I need another drink. Give me a second. Oh, boy. Son of a bitch. Okay. Yeah. So Vicky's contact arrives, and obviously he's there for Maya. This guy, I mean, he's trying his best, but his best isn't very good at all. So in a perfect world, I would use Wesley. I don't know if you guys remember Wesley. He is the Kingpin's assistant. He's in quite a few Daredevil comic books, quite a few comic books that feature Kingpin. A lot of the times you'll see Wesley there, and he was also in the Daredevil TV show. Now, obviously, they could not use Wesley because the Daredevil TV show is now canon, and Wesley was killed in, I think, season 1 by Karen Page. You know, we don't need to go over that, but it was a good scene. And he was a very good character. I didn't think they'd use Wesley in the TV show when it came out, and lo and behold, they did. Anywho, he would have been perfect for this because he's calm, he's composed, he's intelligent. Besides the time that he got shot by Karen Page. But anyway, instead we have this guy who is playing a caricature. You get the sense that the director told him to just act crazy, but in control. And he just kind of takes that and runs with it. So he has like these really eccentric mannerisms and behavior. But, it just, I don't know, it just feels phony a bit. Like, I think maybe if he had been given better direction, this guy really could have done something that was an impressive performance. But he just feels like a cartoon character in a world full of stick figures. And so he doesn't blend in, and he doesn't feel like he belongs. He doesn't feel like a real person. But everyone else feels like idiots. So like there's just this weird mishmatch of and clashes of styles and writing techniques with these characters, and nothing's really working. Yeah, so he's there for Maya. Vicky obviously wants to see the money. But this benefactor, what was his name? Was it Zane? His name might have been Zane. I don't remember. It's not important. We'll call him Zane. He tells Vicky that, well, I have to keep the money secure until I know that you have Maya here. And at this point, like, Maya, I think she's already taken out like either Bridget or Grace. She made a not crossbow, but instead of shooting any kind of bolts or nails or anything, it shoots out, I don't know, fucking non-lethal disc. I'm like, when did Maya become concerned with being non-lethal? You've killed so many people. Now you want to be non-lethal with these bitches that kidnap you? Again, just really fucking nonsensical decision making. So you want to kill these other guys, but you don't want to kill the bitches that kidnapped you. Make it make sense. Anywho, yeah, so Maya easily escapes from the people who held her captive by not keeping her in a locked broom closet and not tying her up again and or knocking her out. So it's quite easy for Maya to escape. At no point do you ever feel that Maya is in any type of danger. And so the benefactor and the goons are just walking around the open area of the skate rink looking for Maya. All the while, Vicky is pestering them for his money that he's owed. Meanwhile, not only has the benefactor not produced the money, but Vicky, he knows that Maya is probably still in the building, but he doesn't exactly have her. So neither man is really keeping up their end of the bargain. And after a while, the benefactor had enough and he shoots the shit out of Vicky, kills that man dead stone cold. And another great moment of amazing writing, Henry, who is tied up next to, or they're not tied up, I guess, but he's placed next to Bonnie because Bonnie escaped the room and then got sat down next to Henry. So Henry and Bonnie are next to each other. And now that Vicky has been brutally murdered in front of them, the benefactor is approaching those two. And Henry says to Bonnie, hey, let me do the talking here. And then when the benefactor begins not the benefactor, that's the wrong word, but when he was going to provide money, when the Kingpin lead stooge man, Zane, whatever his name was, when he starts questioning Henry about where is Maya, what does Henry say? Absolutely nothing. So if you want to have Henry not say anything, clam up, shut up, doesn't want to talk, that's fine. But take out the part where he leans over to Bonnie and says, hey, let me do the talking. Like, that's what I mean when I say I don't think this show had any kind of second draft. It's like they had 2 years to put together a show, and at the last moment they decided, oh shit, we got to start making this show. And then they just started scribbling down words on a sheet of paper, turned that shit in. The mouse didn't take a second glance at it. He took a shit on it, approved it, and then they made this TV show. That's what I think happened. Okay. Continuing on here. So as Henry is responding and taking charge by clamming the fuck up and not saying anything to the stone cold killers in front of him, the lights go red in the skating rink and Dragula by Rob Zombie begins blaring over the PA systems. And that leads the Kingpin's goons and henchmen to go searching for Maya, and what better place to start than the room with the circuit breaker in it so that they can cut the power to the PA system. Lo and behold, Maya thought ahead. She had that rigged, and the goon that tries to shut it off gets electrocuted to shit. And then Maya comes out. She proceeds to beat a bunch of people up. And we have this this fight sequence when she beats up a bunch of goons, kills a bunch of them. And that's when we get like this weird kind of choppy editing style that doesn't blend in. And I don't know if they only had the stunt coordinator for the first episode with Daredevil, and if they couldn't afford him for this sequence. I'm not saying that it was terrible, but it was just okay. Probably still the highlight of the episode, but it is not my favorite fight sequence. As much as I bigged up the fight sequence in episode 1, I can't really do that for this one here, unfortunately. There's a lot of the classic henchmen stand around and wait for his turn. There's a lot of that here. And again, along with the weird editing and cuts, just didn't do this any favors. But there were some cool moments in this fight scene. But as a whole, it just doesn't live up to what it should. But like I said, it's not terrible. It's just not great either. So at this point, eventually, they do subdue Maya, and they have Bonnie, and they have guns pointed at heads, and the lead henchman, he's what was he gonna kill Maya? What was the point? Because clearly Kingpin wanted Maya alive. That's why Vicky didn't kill Maya, because the request was, I need Maya alive. So what's with the whole ordeal then of pointing a gun at Maya if there's no suspense? We know she can't die for several reasons. One, because she's the lead of the show and there's two more episodes. And two, because even within show, the logic here is that she was to be taken alive. So what's the point of pointing the gun at her head? Anywho, you guys are probably wondering, how did Maya and Bonnie and Henry escape from this harrowing situation? With the power of coincidence. So at this very moment, the lead henchman gets a phone call, presumably from the Kingpin, and we don't get to hear exactly what Kingpin is saying, but the henchmen are told to just leave. So they leave. They leave. All right, so moving on here. Uh, we're just gonna go ahead and kind of steamroll here through to the end of this episode. Scully brings Maya a new leg piece, and I mean, I'm not overly familiar with uh, prosthetics or with Native American culture. So I mean, admittedly, until Maya put it on, I wasn't really sure what it was. And this is just me laughing at my own ignorance at this point, really, because I was like, how is Maya supposed to walk on that? Like, I didn't know what it was or how it was going to be used, but it's attached to like the front part of the prosthetic. It was a really cool looking piece, though. It looks like maybe like a shin guard type piece. But anyway, Scully tells Maya about like the importance of representing the culture of the Chotwa people and whatnot. And Maya says that she's usually not used to having something that's that draws that kind of attention, but yeah, she accepts it, and she puts it on, and it's yeah. I mean, that's kind of it. She gets the new leg piece there. And then at the end of the episode, one-eyed Kingpin shows up. And he looks at Maya. And she looks at him. And he looks at Maya. And Maya looks at him. And then the Kingpin looks at Maya. And I'll be damned if Maya doesn't look back at him. And roll credits. So that's the end of episode 3, Tuklo. When I came up with the idea to review every episode individually, to watch an episode and review an episode, and do that over the course of 5 days, I thought, man, that's a really good idea. Like, that's so ambitious. 5 days straight of recording podcasts and doing it solo at that. Man, this is going to be an undertaking. But you know what? I am up for the challenge. I am up for the task. And then I started to watch the TV show, and I thought to myself, oh no, what have I done? I have set myself up. I've been tricked, bamboozled. I'm disappointed. I'm like a scorned parent whose teenager has disobeyed the rules of the house. Like I'm not angry. I'm just disappointed. I'm disappointed, right? Um, when it comes to like comic book adaptations, I never really expect a one for one recreation of anything, and nor is that what I asked for. I have the comic book, so I don't really need anything to be created like a one for one unless it's like a limited issue series, something like The Watchmen. That obviously you can and should do that as a one for one. But for most other comic book adaptations, you don't really need it to be directly what it was from the pages. but you need to have traces of authenticity in it. And that's doubly true, triply true for the characters that you use. There's a reason why I preach so much about character integrity. And what character integrity is, it's understanding the nature, personality, and characteristics of that character and appropriately applying those things to the live action adaptation. So even if you want to tweak little details here and there, you want to change the suit, you want to slightly alter their physical appearance. I mean, even that for a lot of comic readers is a bridge too far. But like for example, Daredevil, he's technically supposed to be a ginger. Nobody's mad that Charlie Cox has brown hair. Why? Because the writing team for Daredevil and Charlie Cox's performance gives us exactly what we want from our Daredevil. He's believable. And he brings out all of the emotions, all of the Catholic guilt, all of the charm and personality from the comic books to the screen. That is character integrity. Chris Evans is Captain America. That is character integrity. There's plenty, thank goodness there's plenty of examples. I mean, another one, you look at Hugh Jackman. He looks nothing like Wolverine, right? Like he's got like the hair and the mutton chops, and that's about as close as we're gonna get. But in terms of build, yeah, he's like a foot taller than Wolverine, damn near. And I mean, Wolverine is like short, stocky. Yeah, he's incredibly muscular, but he's very short and stocky. But the reason why no one cares, myself included, is because Hugh Jackman nails the character integrity of Logan. He understands the character, and he portrays that so well. Alakwa Cox, who plays Echo, I do like the performance that she's given when she's being directed and written appropriately. Is she portraying the Echo from the comic books? God, no. It's not even close, right? And at this point, like I said, that's not even my issue with it. My issue is that there's nothing there that would tell me that this is Echo. The only similarities they have is that they're both Native American and deaf. And the reason why that's a problem with me, and I know that other people are going to feel differently, and that's fine. But the reason why that's a problem with me is because it just looks like Marvel says the only thing that we really need is she's got to be Native American and deaf, because that's the only thing that they applied. So that's the only thing they really care about when they made this TV show. And again, it's not just this. It's several things that they've done. And dude, it's exhausting to deal with at this point. The MCU has never not been more for comic book readers than it is not for comic book readers now. It's tough out here. Tough. Anyways, that's episode 3. We'll see what the next 2 episodes have in store. So I'll be back again tomorrow with episode 4, and then I'll be back Sunday for episode 5, and then Monday I will discuss Echo's comic book origin and her first appearance in the Marvel Knights Daredevil run. That would be all for now, homies. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this, and like I always say, even if I don't enjoy the material, I do always enjoy podcasting. It is such great free therapy, let me tell you. But that's going to be all for now. Love you guys. I'm so thankful for you guys. But until next time, my name is Superhero Homie Q. Take care.